I'll be talking about my husband's and my garden and how it was started, but I wanted to start by saying I grew up in Los Angeles in a home surrounded by lawn, perhaps like many of you. And I'm going to start this talk by telling you that I garden with native plants because I wanted to do something about the environment. I wanted to take the land that's under my control and try to make up for some of the damage that has been caused by the construction of my house and for the roads that I drive on and the grocery stores I frequent. And over time, that desire grew into a passion to encourage and help others to plant natives as well. And that has resulted in this garden tour in my current very busy life. It is a pleasure to have lived in the Bay Area for the last 40 years and to be able to be near places like this. This is the amazing Skyline Gardens Restoration Project, which is located in the Berkeley Hills near the steam train. This restoration work was all done by volunteers, and there'll be a presentation on this project by Glenn Schneider on Sunday, if you'd like to hear how this was done. So there's nothing extraordinary about this project. Non-native plants were weeded out. The natives could then return. And this photo shows what our hills and public parks and schoolyards and our gardens could all look like if we just replaced non-native plants with California natives. I find it so exciting and so motivating to think about the changes we can bring about just by making different plant choices. So I'm going to have a little prelude to my own garden talk here. So let me say that we're justifiably worried about the climate crisis, but the reality is that even if we could stop climate change today, we would still have a biodiversity crisis. And insect population have been reduced by nearly half in the last 40 years. And we all know this is true. It's called the windshield phenomenon. When I was young, I remember my dad having to pull the car over to clean bugs off his windshield. And you might as well, but that doesn't happen anymore. And just since we were children, more than a quarter of our bird life has disappeared. Even common birds are now becoming rare. I've seen a dramatic decline in the number of birds and the number of species of birds in my own backyard in just the last 10 years. Causes of the biodiversity crisis. The good news about this list is that these are all things that we can do something about. Loss of habitat, introduced plant species, use of pesticides and herbicides, bird glass collisions, and outdoor cats. So Doug Tallamy has said in the Chickadee's Guide to Gardening, by including native plants in our gardens, we can create life, and by using non-native plants, we can prevent it. Hearing Doug has just changed the way I think about my garden. It changed my career. If you haven't heard other talks by Doug, you can go to the tour's YouTube channel and search under videos and look under most popular, and you'll find a number of his talks. A fabulous presentation for your HOA or your garden club would be to show one of his videos at a meeting. I'll be referring to Doug and his research in the talk that I'm giving today. So this chart compares the ecological value of commonly used native plants in our gardens and commonly used non-native plants. So the number of species of butterflies and moths that can lay eggs on a plant is important because if only 3 or 4 species of butterflies and moths could reproduce on it, and they have a bad year for some reason, like it's too cold or it's too wet, then there's no food for the birds. In green are the natives that are easy to grow and readily found in native plant nurseries. The number is the number of species of butterflies and moths that can lay eggs on that plant. You can see that the oak is really an ecological powerhouse, as 270 species of butterflies and moths can lay eggs on it. Other great plants for wildlife, hollyleaf cherry, which is useful to about 240 species of butterflies and moths, also California lilac, lupins, manzanita, sages, goldenrod, penstemon. Doug Tallamy calls these plants keystone species as they hold the ecosystem together. On the right in red are commonly used non-native plants. You can see that they have little or no ecological value. These include cotoneaster, eucalyptus, forget-me-nots, fennel, impatiens, tree of heaven, ivy, agapanthus, ice plant, periwinkle, red-hot poker, Australian tea tree, crepe myrtles, ginkgo, grass, and sweet alyssum. So why not just garden with drought-tolerant plants from Australia, the Mediterranean, and South Africa? Well, we all know that it's because plants from those areas provide great habitat for the animals from those areas, But as Doug just pointed out, we need to provide food, shelter, and nesting places for the creatures that live near us. And if you've read that charming article, The Chickadee's Guide to Gardening, it's in my signature line at the tail end. You'll know that almost all birds, 96% of all bird species, must feed caterpillars to their chicks. Baby birds do not eat seeds or berries or sugar water. They need caterpillars. And bird parents must find enormous numbers of caterpillars to get their clutch of chicks out of the nest. The estimate is that it takes 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to make one clutch of chickadees. And as Talmy points out, chickadees are tiny birds, just a third of an ounce. So what if you wanted to support woodpeckers in your yard, a bird that is 8 times heavier than a chickadee? How many caterpillars would that take? So caterpillars, of course, come from butterflies and moths. Butterflies and moths, as we just heard, are very particular about the plants they can lay their eggs on, and what they can reproduce on are mostly local native plants. So this is a variable checker spot butterfly, and here are its caterpillars on the California bee plant. Sometimes people say, well, I don't have native plants in my garden, and I see a lot of butterflies and bees in it. And that's because what they're seeing are mostly honeybees, which come from Europe, and the honeybees would usually be on European plants like lavender or rosemary. And the butterflies are really flower floozies when it comes to sipping nectar. But when it comes to where they can lay their eggs, they are really limited. So here you see cosmos from South America, hot lip sage from Mexico, pride of Madeira, and lavender from Europe. And these plants provide nectar, but not places on which butterflies and moths can reproduce. So the analogy I draw is, what if you and I could have all the free coffee we wanted from Starbucks, but we couldn't have babies? We would quickly have a population crash also. So you might be wondering, what are the most ecologically valuable plants to plant in our area? If you go to the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tours website, you'll see the Keystone Species section, and that's where our Bay Area Keystone Species plants are listed. The data used to create this list was provided by Doug Tallamy. Jennifer Durking made these beautiful Keystone Species signs, which show a photo of the plant, a butterfly or moth that can lay eggs on it, and its caterpillar. You can see on the left the number of species of butterflies and moths that can lay eggs on each of these plants. These signs are available for sale now. It's a short-term sale opportunity. We're going to end it on April the 30th if you're interested in purchasing them. I sent out the link to be able to purchase these signs yesterday and today to people who had registered for this for the tour this year. These signs have been purchased by native plant nurseries, landscape designers, teachers, and HOAs. The HOAs have used them to educate their residents about the beauty and the ecological value of native plants when they have been getting ready to plant with natives. So now here we go. I'm finally ready to take you on a tour of my and my husband Mike's garden in San Pablo and the creatures we have seen in it. I bought this house nearly 40 years ago. I know it's hard to believe I was actually just 12, 13 years old when I made the purchase. There wasn't much going on ecologically when our garden was lawn, ivy, and non-native shrubs. And Mike and I tried to create a nice garden, but it never looked good. And after many years, we finally got the professional help that we needed, and we just started over. And this after photo is exactly what my yard looks like now. Because we're garden friends, the purple in the center is California lilac. It's spilling over a stone wall down toward the pond. The yellow is seep monkey flower, and the white in the back is cow parsnip, which is such a fun plant. It comes in and grows so quickly in the spring and then puts up these really just enormous flower heads. Here we're standing at the top of the lot, looking back down at the backyard, and you can see 3 keystone species in this photo. On the right is sagebrush, Artemisia. The shrub on the left is a big buckwheat, and the purple in the center is California lilac. Mike and I planted this coast live oak on the left 30 years ago when we were married, and it was a 6-inch tall seedling. And we planted the buckeye on the right from a seed 26 years ago when our son was born. On the right is the walkway to our front door, and in spring it's lined with wildflowers. We'll probably be removing the plants close to our house after hearing Berkeley Fire Chief Arnold's presentation on how to protect our homes tomorrow. I think he'll be speaking at 10:45, something like that. So as soon as we put the pond in, the wildlife came. On the left is an aphid eater. It's a species of the aptly named hoverfly, and this creature is hovering protectively near a cow parsnip. And this grasshopper is on a California fescue, which was near our front steps. And I just think this is so beautiful. It looks like a painting to me. On the left here is our native praying mantis, and on the right is a pregnant tree cricket. And you can see the eggs in her abdomen. And it's really lovely for us to hear the crickets chirping at night. These wildflowers are our local clarkiads, Clarkia rubicunda. And on the right, you can see where leafcutter bees have taken these half moon-shaped bites out of the leaves to make nests for their young. These are two dragonflies in the pond. On the left is a green dorner, and it's laying eggs. And on the right is a skimmer. And having heard Doug Tallamy speak, you'll know how exciting it is to see caterpillars in the garden. These are two geometrid moth caterpillars, and they're on goldenrod. They're called loopers or inchworms, as they only have little legs on the front and back. So they stand up straight and then they loop over to move. They're really small. Sometimes I'll take a picture of a blossom and I won't see the caterpillar actually till I get the photo uploaded and everything gets enlarged. On the left is an unknown caterpillar. It's on the unfortunately named hedge nettle because hedge nettle doesn't sting. This is Stachys aegigoides. On the right is an anise swallowtail caterpillar on cow parsnip. So you don't need to plant invasive fennel for the anise swallowtail butterfly to reproduce on. It was able to reproduce before fennel was brought here, and there are many native plants that the anise swallowtail can lay its eggs on. These are three unknown but exciting finds, and I think that little caterpillar on the upper right that's sleeping in the wood chips is just so adorable. I had to go get my camera. This is a gray hair-streaked butterfly. It's perching on some fescue in the garden. And on the right is its caterpillar on the cow parsnip. So this was my first caterpillar photo, and it was really thrilling to see this in my garden. I was out patrolling and saw this little pink thing, and I thought it was a blossom from our neighbor's flowering plum. And then I saw it move, so I ran for my camera. And the gray hair-streaked butterfly is a generalist when it comes to reproduction. So it will lay eggs on a lot of plants, including the three plants in this photo, the California buckwheat on the left, the California lilac on the upper right, and the rosy buckwheat on the bottom right. In the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of field crescent butterflies in my garden. So the field crescent can lay its eggs on aster and goldenrod. And it was exciting to see a field crescent caterpillar on the aster leaf last year. And these photos really show the importance of leaving the leaves. So this is a very small dried aster leaf. It's not more than a half an inch high, all curled up and withered. And on it were two chrysalises. One was on the inside of the curl and the other was on the outside of the curl. And after seeing that and realizing that in the past I have composted many butterflies and moths, now I leave everything in my garden. I leave the leaves, the dried flower heads, the dried stalks. This orange mint moth was the first moth that I photographed. I was outside watching and I saw it going back and forth from this coyote mint, which is on the left. And then I realized that it was laying eggs. This umber skipper is on burr marigold. This is a pond plant. The burr marigold has these really large yellow flowers and it blooms in September, so it brightens the garden in the fall along with the California fuchsia. This American lady butterfly is on a buckwheat flower, and it can lay its eggs on mugwort, which is on the right, and on sagebrush. And as I have both these plants in my garden, I'll be looking hopefully for caterpillars on them this spring. I think they're the reason that I have the American lady butterfly, because I have not seen it in my backyard before. This is a common checkered skipper, which is a really common name for a creature that's so hard to photograph. They're fast, they don't light in one place very long, so it was really a day to celebrate when I got this picture. It can lay its eggs on a checker bloom, which I have in my garden now. So I'll be looking for caterpillars on them soon. And this milkweed bug was the first time that I saw a cause and effect with my native gardening. I was delighted when I planted our local narrow-leaf milkweed to have the milkweed bug come into our garden. And so this is our monarch story. This caterpillar is on the narrow-leaf milkweed, which is our local milkweed. I think the showy milkweed actually comes from the Sierra. So I try to stick with what belongs here, the narrow-leaf milkweed. And this amazing chrysalis really looks like something from E.T., doesn't it, with that glow behind it. And here is a caterpillar on the narrow-leaf milkweed. This chrysalis was attached to a patio chair cushion, and it's turning black and it's translucent, which means that the butterfly is getting ready to emerge. And I had been checking on this chrysalis for days, and especially this day, but I also had a garden tour to put on. So I was going back and forth, like looking at it and then coming inside. And then when I went out one time and realized, oh my gosh, it had, emerged and I'd missed it. I ran for my camera and I was snapping photos as I ran toward it. That's this blurry picture. But I calmed down and I was able to get some better pictures after that. When the butterfly first emerges, its wings are very foldy and soft, and its abdomen is large, and it pumps fluid from its abdomen into its wings to stiffen them as it sits in the sun. So the native plants have brought in the insects, and the insects have brought in the birds. Our lot is 5,000 square feet, so it's not really big. But since Mike and I have converted our garden to native plants, we've seen 40 species of birds and 16 species of butterflies and skippers and moths. And we were lucky enough to have Doug Tallamy stay with us last fall when he came out for the conferences. He was here for a weekend. He was course, like wonderful to be able to spend time with. And when he looked at our yard and I said, we have 16 species of Lepidoptera, he said, oh, you have more than that, but I just haven't seen them. But I'm going to keep looking. So this is a Townsend's warbler and a Nuttall's woodpecker. And I should say here that I'm not a great naturalist. I'm not one of those people who has been identifying creatures since childhood. I wouldn't know what any of these birds or insects are. I just take photos and I post them on iNaturalist, and the crack volunteers there, they ID things for me, and that's how I know what I'm seeing. This is a chestnut-backed chickadee on the upper left, a loving pair of mourning doves on the bottom right, and actually one pair is back this year. They're making a nest on the side of our house right now in a planter pot. The mourning doves meet for life. There's a flicker on the lower left, and on the upper right is a yellow warbler that was migrating through. This Western tanager on the upper left was in our Buckeye last year, just exactly at this time, but we were just getting ready to launch the online tour when I saw this bright bird in the Buckeye that's right outside of my window, and I was able to get this photo. It seemed like such a good sign for the virtual tour. On the upper right is a red-breasted nuthatch, which I had not seen before, so that was a really exciting find. On the lower left is a hooded oriole, and these are robins in the pond. The hummingbirds love to come to this. We call it the rivulet. It's a stone that water trickles from into the pond. On the upper right is the colorful spotted towhee, and with Merlin now the program from Audubon, I think it is, I'm learning bird sounds. So I've been hearing a lot of spotted towhees. Now I know what they sound like because of Merlin. On the bottom are a lesser goldfinch and a flock of bush tits. I'm able to take these photos as Mike and I often have lunch outside, and I bring my camera with a telephoto lens and we sit by the pond, and that's where the birds go. So titmice nested in our garden last year, and it was fun watching the busy parents going back and forth all day feeding their chicks, and this one has caught something in its beak. Bush tits, with their very interesting nest, have nested in the Virgin's Bower twice, once right outside of a kitchen window and once right outside of the bedroom window, so we could really just see, how often they go to the nest. These nests are made out of spider webs and plant material. And I just read that while these nests are active, the parents and their helpers sleep in it. And here is a mourning dove. It's nesting on our outdoor lights. But the garden isn't only for birds and bugs. Our garden is beautiful, water conserving, low maintenance, and it's just so much fun to see the wildlife that is in it now. I'm going to talk about 6 things that you can do to help the environment. So you can plant native plants. Doug Tallamy says shoot for 70% natives by cover and on the plant list, as that's the percentage of natives that is needed in order to provide the quantity of food that birds need to feed their chicks. So any percentage is good, but 70% is what really, it's the cutoff point for birds being able to successfully nest. Choose as many keystone species as you can, as they are the most ecologically valuable, and use local native plants when possible. The easiest way to do this is to hire a designer who specializes in designing native plant gardens. This will cost you a little money up front, but you'll save money in the long run by doing the job right the first time, and you'll have a more beautiful garden if an expert helps you. I know, because I designed my garden multiple times and it never looked good. And we finally got some help and now it's beautiful. Be aware, if you work with a designer and you want a native plant garden, you need to be sure that the person you're working with is familiar with natives and is motivated to use them. If you choose a designer who is not experienced with native plants, then it's likely that the person will give you plants that he or she is familiar with, and you'll get a garden of New Zealand flax and Australian tea trees and Chinese pistachios. I've seen it happen more times than I care to remember, and people have offered me a drought tolerant garden, but it's not a native plant garden. You might want to check out the Find a Designer list on the Bringing Back the Native Garden Tours website to find a designer, and there's a list of keystone species also on the website. So provide a clean water source for birds. On the left is the pond in Roger and Amy Ains' garden in Livermore, which you can visit this year on Sunday, May 4th, on the Bringing Back the Natives Garden Tour. And they sent the photo of this fox, which is drinking from their pond. Providing a clean source of water for birds and other wildlife is one of the best things that you can do. The Bay Area used to be a place of many streams and seeps. Berkeley was called the City of Springs in the early days of European settlement, as every time someone put a shovel in the ground, water shot up. But if you look around, you can imagine how hard it is for today's wildlife to find a clean source of water. If you provide a bird bath, that would be great. To keep it fresh, just rinse and scrub it with a stiff brush every couple of days and refresh the water. The American Bird Conservancy advises skipping the synthetic soaps and cleansers, as they can strip the essential oils off of bird feathers. As Doug Tellamy says, leave the leaves and the twigs and the stems. This one is so easy, as we can just do less. Sometimes butterflies attach their chrysalises to stems, like this one on the left, and they hang there until the butterfly emerges. But more often, when the caterpillar has stopped eating and it's ready to change into the next amazing stage of its life, the pupa, it looks like the one on the right. It hides under leaves or just barely under the soil surface, where it can remain from 3 months or a few months to a year. And then finally, the butterfly will emerge as an adult. I took the photo on the left in my front garden just now under the oak. So I love this natural look. I feel like I live in a park. The leaves keep the weeds from sprouting, so I have less weeding to do. The leaves keep the soil moist, so I don't water. And the leaves decompose and they enrich the soil. So in that photo on the left, we see a California bee plant, that's soaproot there on the right. There's a fescue in the background and some fuchsia in the front. As I know that the leaves also provide shelter for butterfly and moth pupa that are spending the winter buried in or underneath them, when leaves fall on the driveway, I sweep them up and put them in the garden. Leaves are a valuable resource. So I went too fast. These days, I would no more put leaves in the green waste bin than I would put dollars in the green waste bin. So I went too fast and now I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to stay here and say that when you look at your garden, try to think like a bird. We think, oh, that flower is spent. It's time to cut it back. But a bird thinks, wow, there's a lot of seeds in there. Oh, Mike, help me back up, would you? I really want to go back to the last slide. Oh, I need a little help from my IT guy and husband. Um, Thank you. But I also want to say, think like a bee. So consider that there's an entire tiny world that exists in our gardens that we aren't even aware of. For example, native bees lay their eggs in the hollow stems of plants, as you can see in the bottom photo. And if we cut those stems down, we're throwing away baby bees. Sometimes people ask, well, could I cut it down and like lay it on the ground on the side? And I don't know. I think it might rot then and like wouldn't perform its function. You know, it's meant to stay upright and dry until the bees are ready to hatch. On the upper right in this picture, the male longhorn bachelor bees are having a slumber party on these dried flower heads of native wildflowers. And I think it is just so adorable that they gather together in the evening to snuggle up with their friends. And a couple of garden tour hosts have told me that they've seen these bees sleeping on dried flower heads in their gardens. And after I heard that, I don't cut back my spent flowers because if I do, I wonder where are the bees supposed to have their slumber parties? So it gives me more pleasure knowing that my garden is a haven for wildlife than it would to keep it manicured. You can advocate for native plants to city staff, elected officials, to your school administrators. So these are photos of native gardens at the El Sobrante Library on the upper left, the San Carlos Civic Center on the lower left, and the entrance to Prospects Piera Elementary School in El Cerrito on the right. Rebecca Poland will be giving a talk on Assembly Bill 1572 today around 2:30. I encourage you to watch this presentation as AB 1572 is coming right up and it's going to change the way California looks. And I don't want to steal Rebecca's thunder, but I do want to tell you a little bit about it right now. First, what doesn't it apply to, just so we're not worried? AB 1572 does not apply to single family homes, and it does not apply to functional turf like soccer fields or lawn that people stand in at Dunsmuir House when they go to get married there, or to the large areas on the Berkeley campus where students sprawl between classes. Those are examples of functional turf. But beginning in 2027, so less than 2 years from now, and being implemented in stages, Assembly Bill 1572 will prohibit the watering of non-functional turf or decorative lawn that isn't used for any real purpose at schools, HOAs, libraries, universities, businesses, and city, county, and state-owned land. So this presents a fabulous opportunity to create native plant gardens for wildlife in what are now ecological deserts. Um, so this law will be implemented in phases, and Rebecca will be telling you about that. But a lot of places will be scrambling to figure out what they will be replacing their lawns with. And entities affected by Assembly Bill 1572 should really start planning now, as next year, when implementation of this bill is approaching and continuing for many more years, as more and more entities are affected, there will likely be a shortage of landscape designers, installers, plants, and hardscaping materials. So schools, libraries, HOAs, they could put in black and white rocks with cow horns or ice plant or ivy, and they would be in compliance with the law. Or they could put in landscapes that have ecological value. You can help by letting people at libraries, schools, your city council know what's coming up and encourage them to put in native plant gardens in place of the lawns and to start planning now. Ideally, city councils or school boards would require that any lawns being replaced in order to comply with Assembly Bill 1572 would contain 70% or more native plants. And this would do away with the need to argue over every project. EBMUD is offering funding to entities that are removing turf in order to comply with Assembly Bill 1572, and there's up to $20,000 per commercial customer is available. So if you're an HOA, you should be looking at the EBMUD website now. You can check out the rebate section of their website to find out more. And in response to objections that native gardens are just too much work, there was a 9-year-long study that was conducted by the city of Santa Monica. It compared a traditional garden with lawn and Mediterranean plants to a native plant garden, and it found that the native plant garden used 83% less water. It generated less than half of the green waste, and it required 70% less time to maintain than the traditional garden did. And you'll find a link to this study and to this chart here in the Doug Tallamy section on the tour's website. You can put screens up or treat your windows to prevent bird glass collisions. So bird glass collisions cause up to 1 billion bird deaths a year in the United States. Almost half of all bird glass collisions occur on single-story buildings like our homes. We think it's like that skyrise in Chicago, but that's not the case. Most of the time, research has shown we don't even know that a collision has occurred because maybe we're not at home or we're in another room. One of my garden tour hosts told me that she found a collection of mummified bird bodies in her fern bed under her window that she didn't even know were there. But even if a bird flies away, birds that hit the windows are likely to die. Ever since we treated the windows in our house, we have not had a bird glass collision, which is just such a relief. This on the left is our kitchen window. We're looking inside, looking out at our backyard. It has feather-friendly markers on it. I really like this as it lets in more light than a screen does. And in the links that in the emails I sent out this morning and yesterday is information from Feather Friendly, and they've offered a 10% discount to people who use the code that was provided, and you can get your own Feather Friendly markers at a discount. On the right, we're looking at that window from the outside, and they look very different depending on like where the light is coming from and what kind of day it is. In addition to the feather-friendly markers, Mike and I put screens on all of our double-hung windows. So we got double-hung windows specifically when we remodeled so that we could put screens on them. And there's screens on the left in the office in our double-hung windows, and there's kaleidoscope screening on the right in our picture window. You apply both the dots and the kaleidoscope screening to the outside of the window. That's what keeps the birds from hitting them. And actually, if I was sitting in my chair in this picture, you'd be seeing me like right now, because that's my desk. And on the right-hand side, right out there is the buckeye right outside my window. Okay, so next thing you can do is to keep your cats indoors. So you love cats and I love cats, but cats kill birds, billions of them in North America every year. Research has shown that most of the wildlife that cats kill is not brought home. So if you can, keep your cat indoors. If you can't keep your cat indoors, then keep it indoors as much as you can. And the next time you get a kitten, train it right from the beginning and keep it indoors. I'd like to close by saying that native gardens are beautiful, low maintenance, and they require little to no water once established. In my own backyard, I haven't watered in years, and it takes very little weeding. The natives are really lush and full, and they are pretty well able to keep the weeds out. Native gardens are also incredibly fun, as the wildlife you'll see makes living at home feel like living in a wild adventure. This is Nancy Niemeyer's beautiful garden in Clayton. It's the most colorful garden you'll ever see. It's on this year's in-person tour, and you can see it on Sunday, May 4th. Nancy knows that birds are nesting near or in her garden, as she has seen the chicks of 10 different species of birds foraging in her garden in the summer. This is Susan and Bill Teepe's garden in Castro Valley. It's also on the tour this year. You can visit it on Saturday, May 3rd. Last year during the tour, titmice were nesting in the box in the garden, and we could hear the chicks cheeping inside there. Susan has seen more than 70 species of birds in her garden. And this is Trina and Jeff Horner's garden in Walnut Creek. And you can visit this garden on Sunday, May the 4th. And the designer, Lois Simons from Gardening with Nature's Design, will be giving a presentation on this garden tomorrow. I hope that after hearing this talk and Doug's, you'll take the Marie Kondo approach to your garden. If there are plants in your garden that you love, your mother gave the plant to you, or the scent of lavender reminds you of that fabulous time you had in Paris, then you should keep those plants. But if what you have in your garden are just stuff that's always been there, like lawn and camellias, agapanthus, and other non-native plants that you don't love, then consider replacing them with natives that will provide habitat for wildlife. So that's the end of this talk, and I see I have about 5 minutes for questions. So um, if you would like help designing, installing, or maintaining a native plant garden, you might want to contact Four Dimensions Landscape Cooperative. Four Dimensions is an award-winning landscape design company whose motto is restoring the earth, one garden at a time, and whose goal it is to bring people and nature together. Four Dimensions creates well-planned, carefully crafted environments that enrich both human and natural life. You can call on Four Dimensions to design, build, or nurture your garden, and you can reach them at fourdimensionslandscape.com or 510-893-1999.